Hey there everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Archer builds. In this video, we are going to go through the 3 skills: Sniper, Mark of Death, and Barbed Arrows. In the last video, when we went through the last 3 skills, I said this is where it starts getting interesting. But this is where it starts getting really interesting, because these 3 skills are probably the strongest skills on the class. I mean, Decoy maybe you can argue, but like for damage, these 3 skills are the best. And they are the primary reason for why you'd want to use a basic attack build. The primary being barbed arrows, to be honest. That's the big one. So, jumping into Sniper here, one thing I actually forgot to mention about Pierce is that it's very important that because the skill lasts for 30 seconds and the cooldown is 30 seconds long, this is a buff to your character. You need to wait until it's gone before you reapply it. So if you look at the Sniper skill here, when I use it, I get a little buff icon in the top left, and it's good to watch this and then not use the skill again until this has disappeared. If you do, it will not reapply the skill. Instead, it will just reapply the skill rune, but that's another thing that I don't want to go into in this video. I've actually got a video on that, which I will link in the description, so if you want to know more about that, follow the link down there. But ultimately, you want to make sure that the skill buff has ended before you reuse it. So like with Pierce, this is very, very similar. It's a buff for 30 seconds, the cooldown is 30 seconds. If you put more points in this, then the cooldown increases to 40, which I would not recommend in general because it's just more awkward to use. There's then gaps between them and stuff, and you want to have no more than 35 seconds, to be honest. The lifesteal which you gain is not that much. It's not that important. There are other healing things on the class. You can get lifesteal from other places. So yeah, I would not recommend taking it beyond 10, there's just not a whole lot of point. The way this works with range damage increase, that is the exciting thing about this, and it works on absolutely all the damage you do. That is from skills, from basic attacks, anything. It even works on things if you say you're right next to the enemy and then you hit them, but you add a damage over time, you then run away from them, they will then take increased damage based on the distance you are away, because it's when the damage is being dealt, the distance you are from them at that moment, that's when the buff gets applied. So if you're right next to an enemy, this is not going to increase your damage at all. However, as you go away, it's to a certain distance. I don't know the exact distance, sorry, I'm not an archer, I don't have that memorized, but it's ultimately, say where we are now, okay? It's like about the distance that this enemy is, maybe a bit shorter. You need to be a good distance away, but it's not like absolute furthest distance you can attack to get the full boost. And then you get this 56% damage increase, which is crazily high. It's really good, and as you can imagine, well, I'm raving about it, of course, but this is a very big part of the class in general. They're all about dealing damage from range. It's all about dealing high damage, and this is a big part of that. You've got to have the sniper on almost every single build you do, and it's why you want to be at range most of the time. There's certain setups you can do to fight at melee range, but like ultimately if you can fight at range, it's better because of this skill. So I'm going to show it in a second, but first of all I want to talk about Mark of Death, because this is actually very similar. It increases range damage in exactly the same way, however it works on just one target, and rather than this being a buff, you mark an enemy and it lasts for 10 seconds that they take 50% increased range damage. This works on all allies attacking the target. So if you're in a party and you mark a boss, all your allies attacking, all your friends, whatever you want to call them. I call them allies, but that's me being silly. So you stand back at range. If you're attacking it, you all get the 50% damage increase. It's a very good thing for party play. Again, putting more skill points in this just increases a sort of healing. It's not that important. It doesn't increase the cooldown, but it increases the mana cost, and it can get a bit annoying because you kind of want to save your mana cost for barbed arrows, ultimately when you're playing. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of point putting any more points in this after 10. And anyway, so that's those 2 skills. I'm going to show them in combat in a second. I hope they're both clear enough. Yes, I think I've covered everything on them. So I'm going to talk about skill runes first on them. Sniper, not much has really been done with them. They've just got damage added to them. It's like there's a chance of damage on each attack, that kind of thing. There's also a little bit of knockback on there, which is, to be honest, is just a bit annoying. But because these things are usually they only like trigger every few seconds. Doesn't get to an annoying point where it's actually a difficulty, like something that's going to get in your way. They do add some extra damage. So anyway, the reason why I think we haven't had that many great screw-ins for this, at least at my time making this video, is because the skill is so strong anyway that it doesn't really need screw-ins in it. But anyway, so I'm going to put Ice Blasting Shot in. I think that's the current best. Mark of Death, the screw-ins on this, they're actually very varied. They do some different great things. So Mark of Ignition here's the one I'm going to put in. That just does a load of damage. It does a little bit of area damage too. Then you've got ones like Mark of Justice, which heals your teammates, and interestingly increases. See, it says increases damage from all sources. This actually means that you get the 50% damage increase even if you're right next to the boss. So rather than having to have that range, you can attack right next to the boss. It means it's going to happen for your, like, if you're playing with any knights and they're attacking the boss, they're going to get the range increase, the damage increase as well, that kind of thing. There's then others with like slow and stuff. So there's some cool stuff going on with Mark of Death screw-ins. Be sure to check them out. I'm just going to use Mark of Ignition for the damage. So we're going to use these two different skills. Now I've made myself invincible just to make this a little easier with showcasing. I'm going to attack the boss first of all with no buffs on, so you can see the kind of damage I'm doing. As you can see, it's tickling the boss just a little bit. If I now put on Sniper, it's going to go down a little bit faster. You can kind of see it. I mean, it's doing the sort of water damage and stuff, so yes, it's working, but it's not doing that much. I'm going to keep the boss at range now. So now I'm going to mark the boss, and we'll see how much more damage it does. It does a lot more. The skill rune actually does a lot of the damage here, so it's making it slightly biased. If I didn't have the skill rune in it, it wouldn't be doing quite so much damage. But ultimately, you know, having both those range damage buffs on, you're doing over double the damage on top of then whatever skill rune effects are happening. So that's cool. That's how those skills work. I'm now going to use, well, I need to talk about barbed arrows first. So barbed arrows, the way this works is a little bit complicated. Some people get confused by it. The first thing I want to point out is the mana cost. So the mana cost here is mana per basic attack you do, and it's 10. This 10 gets reduced by your passive skill, the mana drain. So this is a thing that was on every class. You regain mana as you do basic attacks. However, because you've got barbed arrows on Archer, you're actually going to be losing mana every attack. And it's very important you have this maxed out, so it takes 5 mana off the cost of barbed arrows. So this is actually going to be costing you 5 per hit, and if you take this anywhere beyond 10 out of 99, if you take this up to 99, it costs 40 per shot. So you go from what your usual is just 5 mana per shot to 35. And that is just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. It increases the damage a bit, but like, to be honest, most of the damage comes from the screw-ins anyway. That yeah, it's really not worth it. I would highly recommend you do not get this beyond 10 out of 99. So the way this works is a constant buff. As soon as you hit the skill, the buff is applied to your character. You can see it on your character as some kind of effect. Yeah, there you go. See, it's like my bow and arrows are like they're kind of lit up. They kind of look sort of scary, to be honest. And then when you have this on, every single basic attack you do will put a damage over time on the enemy. That damage over time is going to do 25% of your damage. That's 25% of a basic attack, once per second for 3 seconds. So it's going to do 75% in total. It stacks up to 3 times, so ultimately what's going to happen is every second, sorry, as you're attacking an enemy, every second they're going to take an additional 75% damage. This doesn't sound like that much, but when you include screw-ins, it can get quite good. And where this gets ridiculously crazy, and where this skill becomes very, very powerful, is that certain screw-ins remove the stack limit. So when you're looking at screw-ins, make sure that they do not mention any stack limit of 3. There is a unique case, at least so far, this is the only one that does it. Shadow Cannon, it doesn't mention a stack limit, but it's because it just causes an explosion each time you attack. The damage is actually a lot lower because it's not a damage over time. So all the other ones, they do this damage like 3 times over. On this one, it doesn't do that at all. So anyway, there's a little bit of complication there with screw-ins and like how they're working. But like, if you're using one which removes the stack limit, then this stack limit of 3 suddenly becomes up to 18. The reason why I say 18 is because the maximum number of attacks per second that you can do is 6. So over 3 seconds you can do 18 attacks. So you can do 6 times the damage that you can on anything which has the stack limit of 3. Now that's the maximum. In PvE you can hit that maximum if you have your stats done right, or you're just strong for the content. PvP, your attack rate's a bit slower, so it's less important there. However, this stack limit is like limiting you to like 1 attack per second in terms of the amount of damage you're getting out of this. So anything without the stack limit is going to be stronger even in PvP where your attack rate's slower. It's very important to use one without the stack limit. So talking about one without stack limit, the one which historically, because it was the first one that did this, it's historically overpowered, is Scorching Arrows. I've made a few videos going through this, and when it first came out, this was so strong. I think it multiplied the damage archers dealt by about 7 times compared to what they were before this came out. Now it's not quite so effective, and it's slowly losing its power with time, but yeah, this is a very, very big damage skill as Garoon, and definitely a big reason to use this. So anyway, we'll show it in combat now. It's not so significant as like the only thing that's going to do damage on your class, but anyway, we'll show with just the normal barbed arrows on. If I can attack with this, so this is with it on, and if I stop attacking, for example, you'll see that there's still some damage over time going on the boss there. That's the barbed arrows going on. I'll now attack with Scorching Arrows equipped, and we can see the difference in the damage that's going to be dealt to the boss. Just watch the health at the top, how much it's going to go down. Oh, actually, I need to use the skill. Whoops. I didn't use the skill there. Okay, so where is the boss? I need to target it. There we go. Okay, so it takes like a couple of seconds to get going, and then you get the proper damage over time going. As you can see, it's going down really quite fast. This is just from like using one skill. It's going to constantly drain my mana. I've got a mana potion on, so it's not doing it at all. But this is going to mean your mana is slowly draining down constantly. So now I'm going to use all 3 of these skills together because I really want to show how this build comes together with the 3 different skills. So let's use that first. We use the sniper, we'll mark the boss, and then we just get attacking. Get attacking for a few seconds, and you can see the boss's health is going down super fast. I mean, now it's healing. I picked this boss because it heals. It's very good for doing that. I might have not had Scorching Arrows buff on there. I'll just redo this one more time. Yeah, I've got the mark ready, so let's just go straight into it. We'll put the mark on. I've definitely got Scorching Arrows on. Once the damage kicks in, okay, now it's really going. We've got the sniper reapplying. Yeah, that's what's happening with this boss health now. As you can see, it goes down a lot faster than, like, if you remember at the beginning, I was attacking with no buffs on. This is where you get your damage, and it's like what you're going to really be doing with your skills, these skills together. And then with piercing too, I mentioned before how you can use like the decoy to group all the enemies together. You can use like Reign of Horror or whatever to keep the enemies there. With pierce, you can then attack all the enemies at the same time with your basic attacks. And then with these other basic attack buffs, Mark of Death kind of excluded because that's just for bosses, but then you can attack all of them with that much damage. You can kill the enemies off really quickly, and that's how the cast comes together. I made this video a little bit longer because I wanted to go through that and kind of explain how everything fits together and works, because it's a little bit more it's involving more skills than maybe the other classes have, where like each skill kind of standalone does something. Here it's like all of them come together to form something. So I hope that's been clear to you. I hope it's been very informative, and you now know how these skills work, what you want to do with them. All 3 of these skills, you want to put just 10 points into them. Barbed Arrows, if you put any more than 10 into it, it is really bad. It will just drain all your mana, and then and doesn't actually increase the damage that much. The other 2, you get a bit of healing, but to be honest, you don't need the lifesteal or the healing which it gets from which it gives you. Much better just keep them lower mana cost and try to kind of keep your mana for Barbed Arrows. Once you get loads of mana on your class, it's actually okay. You can cope with things, but it is good to keep the other skills kind of low mana cost if you can, so that you can manage it. I think archers have the biggest problem with mana when they first start out, and they're trying to use all these different skills at once. So anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.